he must have been immediately delighted to be apparently off the hook, that he didn't then have to take the decision to launch the military operation because here was a scheme worked out with the French and Israelis, and if they all played their part in this play, he seemed to think it would be all right.
For the plan to succeed, the pact must be kept secret. Yet just as a meeting is finishing, there is a twist.
Before we broke up, to my complete surprise, a piece of paper was brought in for signature. There had been no mention whatever of a document emerging from these talks. The idea only occurred at that time.
Logan returns to London with the secret agreement and gives Eden a copy of the signed document.
We returned late that night and took the document to him in number 10. And his immediate reaction was, "Oh my God, I never expected anything to be signed."
Eden orders all the British copies destroyed and asks the French to do the same. They refuse. David Ben-Gurion has returned to Israel and put his copy away for safekeeping.
For us, colonialism was a positive thing, not a negative one. For the British, it was negative. For Ben-Gurion, it was an assurance that he wasn't the naughty boy who just attacked out of the blue the Egyptian, but that he was part of a big scheme of two major powers. And for him, it was important.
On November 29th, Israel sticks to the script outlined in the secret plan and launches a lightning attack across the Sinai Desert. The UN now faces the biggest challenge of its history as it searches for ways to keep the crisis from blowing up into a third world war. November 5th, Anglo-French paratroops invade the Suez Canal.
The paratroops thought that they could pull it off on the 5th. The British landed port side. Port Suez was captured by the French, but on the British side, there was some resistance.
His army has been devastated by the Israelis. Nasser continues arming the civilian population, including a young student named Kalak Badrawi.
When we joined, the first thing they did was they gave us those cases of Kalashnikov rifles right out of the boxes with grease, and they said, "Okay, here is your rifle. You know, that's what you're going to defend yourself with."
With British and French troops fighting on Egyptian territory, the crisis could scarcely become more dangerous, but it does. On November 5th, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev steps in. Britain, France, and Israel are warned that Russia will not stand idly by and watch its ally, Egypt, destroyed.
He said to the world that don't be surprised if a consequence of your actions is that nuclear weapons will fall on London and Paris.
The world holds its breath. Could the Soviets be preparing for war with the West?
This was the first time they had ever made a nuclear threat. And he didn't make it because he assumed it would work. He made it because he felt he had no alternative. The world was waiting to hear what he was going to do for his ally.
That moment I did think this is really going to be the Third World War. There was this vision, you know, that nuclear weapons would be launched on London, and if Eden didn't back down, that was what was going to happen.
Eisenhower launches his U-2 spy planes to look for signs that Soviet troops are mobilizing. Nothing can be found.
Well, the dirty little secret in Moscow was that they didn't have any weapons that could reach London and Paris.
The cost of mobilizing the armed forces has almost bankrupted the country. Britain is now begging America for loans to stay afloat. Eisenhower says no. By the time the main British assault force hits the beach, the fighting is over.
The war was in fact over by the time the bulk of British troops landed. And then we literally waded onto the beach and waited for orders. And that first night, we actually spent sleeping on the beach.
On the 8th of November, the beginning of the world's first UN peacekeeping mission.
Most of the officers in the regiment took it as a mortal blow. It was the first genuine sign of the humiliation to come.
The humiliation is complete when in the dead of night, British troop ships quietly slip out of Port Said.
I think it was very, very hard on the professional soldiers who had gone into this enterprise in good faith, thought that this was going to be the final roar of the British Lion, and suddenly found that it was just a sort of mingy little squeak that had achieved nothing.
In England, demonstrators are demanding Eden's resignation.
Then, if he is sincere in what he is saying, then he is too stupid to be a Prime Minister.
Now in poor health, and with support within his own party disappearing, Eden makes his decision.
Can I just say, thank you very much for all your kindness to me, all of you, during my period of office.
On January 9th, less than 25 days after he accepted a ceasefire, Prime Minister Anthony Eden leaves politics forever. But he will never admit to the secret deal with Israel. And it is not until 1996 that the copy of the secret pact Ben-Gurion took home with him is made public.
He felt that he personally promised Eden not to expose him. So he never allowed to show this to anybody until after the death of Eden and after his death. To his last day, he didn't allow to show the protocol.
When Nasser regains control of the canal, he destroys the statue of the Lesseps, a clear message of Egypt's contempt for Western imperialism.
President Eisenhower meets the Washington press corps at a time of grave world crisis.
Within a month of Britain's withdrawal from Suez, Eisenhower does what he said he'd never do: commit U.S. troops to the Middle East.
Will not go to war.
In the following years, much of the Arab world accuses America of replacing Britain with its own brand of imperialism.
The very factors which led the Americans to keep their distance from Britain in moving too aggressively against Nasser in 1956, they lose sight of those, and 2 years later, they're doing exactly that.
For nearly half a century, U.S. troops are sent into the Middle East, beginning with Lebanon in 1958 and 1983, then attacking Iraq in 1991, and again in 2003.
We may find out that Iraq, in the longer term, is one of the most ill-advised operations. The jury's still going to be out on that one. The fact of the matter is that Iraq could turn out in the long run to be a Suez 50 years later. But whereas that will take years to find out with Iraq, with Suez, we found it out within a matter of weeks.